Hey Slingers, welcome back to another week of the Wordslinger podcast. We're going to have some thrills and chills for you as we talk to author Jack Carr. So stick around for all the good stuff. I'll see you on the other side.
It's the Wordslinger podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Well, I am Kevin Tomlinson, the Wordslinger. I'm so glad you're here. Now, you know I like talking to thriller authors in particular, right? So I'm talking to Jack Carr. He's a New York Times bestseller. He's a former Navy SEAL, so he's got a lot of insight into what he's writing about. This was a really interesting conversation, so I'm happy to bring it to you. Stick around after this interview. I'm going to chat about a few things that are going on in the Wordslinger world, including a nice review we got on the show. So I love when we get reviews. We hardly ever get reviews on the show for some reason. So we're going to take a look at that. So stick around after this fantastic interview with thriller author Jack Carr. Hey everybody, thank you for sticking around. Now I'm talking to somebody who is he's hitting the scene loud and proud, man. I'm talking to Jack Carr. He's the author of The Terminal List. It's his debut novel, but he's already blowing things up with this in a way that makes authors like me kind of jealous. Jack, I gotta tell you, man. But first, welcome to the show.
Well, hey, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Now, this is in full disclosure, this is our second time trying this. The man was cracking down on Jack yesterday.
I think so. I think we had some NSA surveillance or some Russian bots.
Did you have a van outside your home, Jack?
I keep an eye on it, and no, we were clear, so I'm not quite sure what's going on, but so we seem to be dialed in now.
Good deal. All right. So, now, there's a ton of stuff I want to talk to you about, but we're going to hop in first. I wanted to talk to you about how you got into this, because I know just a little bit about your background. I know you're a former Navy SEAL. And by the way, I didn't get a chance to tell you this yesterday, but I thank you for your service, man. I do appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much.
So you went from Navy SEAL to writing novels. So you went from something soft and cushy to this really tough, work. So I'm just curious.
Transition. Yeah, it's a tough transition. No, one prepared me for the other, and I feel very fortunate to have ended up where I am. And it wasn't by accident. It was something I wanted to do since I was a little kid. So those two things I wanted to do were, one, serve my country in uniform, specifically as a Navy SEAL, and just to write fiction in this genre. And as the time in the military was coming to an end, it was time to start pursuing that other mission, that next dream, and that was to write in the political military thriller genre. And I just feel very fortunate to have it taking off the way it is and to have the book resonating with people.
What is it specifically about that genre that attracted you?
So I was wanting to be a SEAL since I was a little kid. I was naturally drawn to stories that had military protagonists, or protagonists that had been in the military or in the intelligence community or something like that. And my mom was a librarian, so we were surrounded by books from a very early age, and she instilled a love of reading in us very early on. So as soon as I could really make that transition to more adult type books, so in junior high probably, I started reading things like Tom Clancy and J.C. Pollock and Nelson DeMille and David Morrell, one of my favorites. And then as I got older, I discovered Stephen Hunter and later Vince Flynn and Daniel Silva and Brad Thor. So
it's like you're reading off of my bookshelves, man.
I'm just reading the ones behind you there. Like Usual Suspects. I was just drawn to that genre, and I remember telling my mom a long time ago that I wanted to do this. And she's a librarian, and I asked her, hey, if I wrote a book, she didn't typically read the Tom Clancy's and David Morrell's and the stuff that I was reading as a kid. And I remember asking her if I ever wrote a book like this, would you read it? And she reluctantly said yes. And now she's now she loves it. Now she's quite she's
but
very.
Come on, there was no question she was going to read the book.
No question. I think she wished I'd picked another genre, but no, she's thrilled, and so am I. It's really a dream come true.
So had you done any writing at all before you penned this book?
No, I was just always, as a kid growing up in creative writing classes and things like that, I always excelled in those and really
Yeah.
enjoyed those. But over the 20 years I spent in the military, I didn't spend any time cultivating my writing other
Yeah.
than professional writing. I was really focused on the task at hand, focused on the mission, because that's what you really owe the guys under your
Yeah.
command. You owe to them, their families, the mission and the country, really. So I didn't practice or really think about it at all until I got back from my last deployment. And after my last deployment, I went to a training command, and I wasn't responsible for taking guys downrange
Hmm.
anymore. And that's when I took a breath and said, okay, I'll be getting out here pretty soon. It's time to get out and take care of the family. And what am I going to do next? Well, my passion and my dream has always been to write in the genre. So better get to it. And I
Yeah.
started writing.
So now you're just basically just starting out. I mean, but you're already blowing up. I find it incredible and a little annoying. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Sorry. Sorry.
No, man. I'm really just teasing you. But so I mean, what you went in? You didn't just go in the military. You went into the Navy SEALs, which is one of the more. I don't want to hack off any of my military listeners.
Sure.
You're all amazing people, but the Navy SEALs has a reputation for being one of the hardest programs, one of the most disciplined. I gotta feel like that has helped you in jumping into the discipline of writing. Do you write every day?
So I wish I could tell you that I had a disciplined approach to this, but
Okay,
with three
that
kids,
makes me feel a little better.
with three kiddos climbing all over me all the time. I mean,
Right.
they're 7, 10, and 12, and quite active. And we just moved to a new city and a
Yeah.
new house and all that stuff. So it is complete chaos at all times. And
Right.
I just realized recently that the office that I had designed in the house to where I would spend time writing and where it was going to be very peaceful and quiet is never going to be that way.
Right.
So I've resorted to going to the local library and writing there. So,
Oh, okay.
but
You went straight for library.
I did.
They do the transition. Like, I'm going to hit Starbucks. I'm going to hit a cafe.
Yeah. No, can't. Too many distractions still, I think. And
Yeah.
yeah, no, the library treated me very well in Coronado. So the first book, I was in Coronado, California. That's where we finished up my time in the military. Because really, as a SEAL, you're in Coronado, California, or Virginia Beach, Virginia. We spent time in both, but there's some other places you can be too. But those are primarily the two places. And man, it is so loud there. You're packed in. It's a small little resort island community, and you are packed in houses right next to each other. And there's always lawnmowers going and weed whackers and leaf blowers and people coming to the door. And it is just loud. And so I do need it to be quiet and to have some peace while I'm writing. And up here in the mountains of Utah, luckily there's a local library, and then there's a lot of other places I can go as well. But what you were talking about earlier, so I was drawn to BUD/S SEAL training and to the SEALs in general because it is one of the tougher things that you can do in the military. And I found out about SEALs when I was 7 years old. And once again, my mom took me to the local library and we did our research, and that's what I found. At least back then in the early 80s when there was hardly anything written about SEALs. My takeaways were, hey, these guys are pretty tough, and they're touted as a very elite fighting force. And it says here in this one chapter of this one book that it's the toughest training ever devised by a modern military. And whether that's true or not, it's still fairly difficult. And that they had me from an early age. So from age 7 on, I wanted to join the military and specifically test myself and see if I could make it through SEAL training and then serve my country and go down range. So it was as far as the other part of that question, did it prepare me for writing? I think just life in general. It doesn't matter what I was going to do next or what I was going to do in the military. I was going to, give it my best, give it my all, give it the focus that it deserved. And the same thing is true with writing. So although I'd like to get disciplined about when I write, I just absolutely love every part of the process, coming up with the story, coming up with an outline, coming up with a title, writing, problem solving. Because really that's what you're doing on the battlefield is you're creatively solving problems. And that's the same thing you're doing writing. You're coming up against something in writing, and but I didn't let it stop me. If I got to a point in the story where I said, "Oh man, I don't know how he's going to really deal with this situation," I didn't let that stop me. I just went past it, and then I'd figure it out later and come back. So in that sense, it's a lot different than the battlefield, because on the battlefield you have to creatively solve those problems really as they're happening.
Yeah, I like that analogy quite a bit. Not for the least reason that it makes me feel like I'm some strategic general now, leading the troops on the
That's
right
it.
battlefield.
That's it. No, lead the charge.
Lead the charge. So you're okay. Now you got this first book up. I assume you're working on the next book. Is that correct?
Yep.
Do
Yep.
you
So
have
I'll go back to that as
some
soon as
sort of
this
image goal?
podcast is over. I will go get back to writing that. And
Oh man, you tell
essentially
me
it's
I'm delaying the book.
no, it's okay. I need a break. So no, actually I don't need a break. It's tough for me to take breaks because once I get
Yeah.
in and start writing, I hate it when that time comes when, oh, it's time to pick up the kids or I have another appointment or I got to do something else because I just
Yeah.
love writing so much. So when it comes time to stop, it's painful for me actually.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love it. And right now it's at that stage where it's done. So when I told my wife that the first one was done and then I continued to work on it late into the night, because in Coronado, that's about the only time it's quiet, it was from 10 a.m. to about 2 a.m. In the morning. Then I kept working on it. She said, I thought you told me it was done. I said, well, it's done. It's just not done. So that's the rereading and editing, and making sure it flows and all the rest of it. So I'm at that stage right now. Is the time to read and reread and edit and go back and insert chapters and take chapters out and that sort of thing. So that's where I am right now.
Do you use any special writing tools, or do you use what do you do to write?
Yeah, Microsoft Word. That's it. Yep, that's
the
one. And someone told me about Scrivener recently, and I need to maybe check that out. But I think I need some time to delve into that. And
it has a little bit of a learning curve. I use Scrivener. I love it. A lot of authors I know use Scrivener, and it's some authors hate it, some love it. But I think for you, since you're talking about going back and you may be rearranging chapters or whatever, it might be pretty useful to you.
Yeah, I want to check it out. It's just the time that it takes to learn something new when you're on the clock. And for the first one, there was no deadline. The first one was just, hey, whenever it's ready, whenever I feel it's ready, then I'll send it off to Simon and Schuster. And so I just got it to a place where I thought it was the best it could possibly be without a professional set of eyes. And then it was time to package it up and send it off. So this one, there's a deadline. So a little different this time around, but it's great at the same time. And I'm not,
we need the fire
about that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not all worried about the deadline. I just, I'm excited to continue the editing process and make sure it's the best it can possibly be before I send it off to New York.
Now, how did you end up attracting Simon & Schuster? Did you go in through an agent or did you go directly to the publisher?
Yeah, so I did it a really different way. And, I didn't really spend too much time researching the process or how to do it or what was the quote unquote, the right way to do it. I just started writing and about, I guess 4 or 5 months into the process, a friend of mine connected me with Brad Thor and said, hey, would you like to talk to this Brad Thor guy? I was like, yeah,
sure.
I'd love to talk to him. And
if you want to connect me with Brad Thor, you can go right ahead.
Yeah, no, it was certainly helpful. So we talked for a while and he could not have been more generous with his time. And I guess I passed his test. So he asked me, a bunch of questions and we talked and had a great conversation, but I think he was really wanted to know like, hey, where was this? Why did I want to write? Why did I want to become an author? Yeah. And I think he could tell that it was coming from a really genuine place and something that I was passionate about and was going to do, regardless of either how much money you can make or can you make a profession out of it and long term. I just wanted to write. I just wanted to do it since I was a little kid. And I think that really, really came through and resonated with him as well. So he said, hey, you know what? I'm not going to help you as you go along through this process. I'm not going to read any chapters. I'm not going to give you any advice whatsoever. But your friend, the friend that connected us, told me about some of the things you did in the SEAL teams. And as a thank you for that, I'll send it to Simon & Schuster for you.
That's fantastic.
And I was like, wow, that's amazing. He said, when are you going to finish? And I said, 1 year from today. And so sure enough, I didn't contact him for another year. And a year to the day, I called him back and said, hey, it's done. And that's when it was done, not done. So then I had another, 4 months of editing, but it was, it was a story. It was a book at that point. And he was so great. So he gave me a couple pieces of advice and you've probably heard these before. But he said, hey, well, one of the best ones that was most liberating was give yourself permission to write a bad chapter. Yeah. I never forgot that. It was like, oh, wow. It was just so liberating to have Brad Thor say that. And he didn't mean it's okay to write a bad chapter. What he meant was just sit down and do it. Just don't wait for the inspiration. Don't wait for the stars to align and everything to be perfect. Just sit down and write. Because he also said, make every chapter as good as the first one. So, so he definitely did not mean to, write
And you're going to have a bad chapter anyway, right? You might as well get it out of the way as quickly as possible.
Don't let that stop you.
Yeah.
That was the main thing. And then he said, hey, the only difference between a published author and an unpublished author is that the published author never quit. And that really resonated with me because of BUDS and SEAL training and how easy we make it for guys to self-select out of that program. So we make it very easy for people to quit, which is why there's the 80% attrition rate. And all you have to do is ring a bell 3 times and put your helmet down, and then you can be nice and warm and comfortable again. And so not quitting, that definitely, well, it applies to anything really in life. And I just never paid attention to the odds. I get asked a lot, hey, do you know the odds of getting published with Simon & Schuster? And I say, no, I have no idea, because I never paid attention to that. And I never wasted any bandwidth thinking about how hard it was going to be. So same thing with BUDS, with SEAL training. I didn't pay any attention to those odds, to that 80% attrition rate. I said, oh, that's the toughest thing I can find, and let me get in there and test myself. So same thing. I didn't waste any bandwidth worrying about how hard it would be to find a publisher or find an agent or finish a book or whatever. I just sat down and started working.
I like it because it's clear that you dove into writing the book because you wanted to write a book. You didn't see it as this could be my ticket to, kicking back, living in South America, or you didn't see it as a vehicle. You saw it as the path, right?
Exactly. And I think so that correlates to the military as well. So we don't call in the military, you don't call it, it's not the career of arms, it's the profession of arms. And that's it's that way for a reason. And same thing with writing. It's a profession. It's not, I don't look at it as a career. And so as I transitioned from the military, I didn't want, and I was very fortunate to have a lot of options and opportunities for whatever reason, but I wanted to follow what I was passionate about and what I really wanted to do. And that was the profession of arms. It wasn't a profession of writing. It wasn't a career in finance or whatever else. It was, I want to write this kind of novel. Yeah. And I was just so fortunate that Brad opened the door for me. And he said, hey, I can't guarantee that if I send this, that they're going to even open the package when it arrives in New York.
Oh, come on.
Definitely can't guarantee that they'll read a word of it.
It's Brad Thor, though.
Yeah.
He could have sent it on toilet paper and they would have read it.
And, but he said, he was like, hey, I cannot guarantee they're going to like it. He didn't even read it before he said he did. And he really didn't send it himself. He just let them know it was coming. And then I shot it off. But, Emily Bestler gave it a read, and next thing you know, we're meeting in New York, having an amazing cup of coffee together, and off we go to the races. So I did not have an agent first, but she did tell me that I needed an agent. So when we sat down, she said, I want this, but you need an agent. Yeah. And I said, how do I get one of those? And so anyway, she recommended a few and picked one, and off we went to the races. Yeah.
See, at that point, when you've got Simon & Schuster interested, finding an agent is not the problem.
Right. It was great. I interviewed 4 different amazing agents, and it was tough to choose because they're all so great.
Yeah.
But, ended up with the right.
I've met some incredible agents. That's a whole other profession. And I've actually been actively trying to get agents on the show, and they're always too busy. I've had some interested, and then last minute they can't, and then, it never gets rescheduled. But I want to talk to agents because even though I primarily work with indie publishers, that whole landscape is fascinating, and the agents are right there. They know more about that industry than practically anybody. So
that's amazing. I'm just wading in to this world here. So I'm just I'm just learning all about it, but it's fascinating. And like I said, I love every part of this process, and everyone has been so kind and welcoming to me. And I really didn't expect it to be that way. I thought it was going to be, very, very competitive and very cutthroat, and people were keeping me at arm's length because I'm the new guy coming in and want to, invade their turf or whatever. And exact opposite is true. And it was refreshing. To step into an industry like that. So like I said, I absolutely love every.
That's what's really attracted me to publishing. They can be cutthroat. Let's be honest. We know that there are people out there that are this side.
I'm very fortunate, I guess, not to run into any.
You've been very fortunate. Yeah, I was not as fortunate, but I will say that through most of my career, 98% of the people that I've encountered in this industry have been fantastic, amazing people. So maybe the tide shifted. Maybe the tide went out on the folks who were not, good folks.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know.
Are you a member of International Thriller Writers?
I am. So I did that this last fall, and I'll be in New York this summer for the first time for that International Thriller Writers Conference, and really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I want to go. I may attend. It's kind of up in the air right now because of other commitments, but I joined up too. That's a great organization. It's been very supportive. Their little newsletter has been great, but Brad's part of that. I think he's one of the founders of that, isn't he?
I'm not sure if he's a founder. He's one of the founding members, but David Morrell was one of the guys that really founded it. And with Kimberly, anyway, I'm going to mess up, but David Morrell was one. And he's the guy that recommended it to me. And
okay.
Yeah, before the book was published, I was just reached out to him randomly. I got on his website and was like, wow, I grew up reading David Morrell and Brotherhood. Yeah. Well, of course, he created the character Rambo, of course. But Brotherhood of the Rose, League of Night and Fog, Fraternity of the Stone. I love those books. And I said, hey, I guess I'm about to be a published author. Why don't I reach out and say hi?
Yeah.
He got right back to me. He was amazing.
I got a chance to meet him last year. I believe he's at NINC.
Which I don't know what that one is.
Yes, that's the national, not national, Novelist Inc. It's a huge author conference in Florida. I'm always shocked when authors haven't heard of it, because when I'm there, it's like it's wall to wall authors of the whole state.
I'm gonna write that down.
NINC, yeah, man. Yeah. Maybe I'll see you out there. I'm there practically every year. So
awesome. Yeah, so he suggested International Thriller Writers to me, and so I could probably take this advice and signed up.
Yeah, no. When someone like that tells you you should join this organization, you should join that organization.
Exactly.
So you, man, we're gonna get into it. I know partially where this is gonna head, but so you actually have somebody interested in turning this book into a film already.
We do. Very forward before it even published, before it even hit that March 6th publishing date. We had 3 offers on the table.
Yeah.
So I can't announce it right now. They're going to do an official announcement here in the next couple of weeks, I think. But I am very, very excited about it. And
you did tell me that we would have to go vague, but I wanted it out there. And what's that process been like so far?
My guess from my experience is that every time it's different. Even though I've only had one experience, so it seems strange to say that. But with 3 different offers and seeing just how those came about, I can kind of deduce that I think they all happen in different ways because there's so many different personalities involved, so many different agencies involved, so many different people that have so many different managers and lawyers and all the rest of it. So I can only think that there's not a template for it, and that it happens differently every time. But I could not be more thrilled with who picked this up, and it's the exact person that I wanted to play the main character from the get-go. So
really,
crazy how life works. Yeah.
Okay, so Meg Ryan.
We're gonna take a different take on it.
Well, we have a slightly different perspective. That's fantastic, man. Well, first of all, congratulations on that, because that's a big win. A lot of writers dream of having that kind of thing. That's pretty awesome.
It's crazy. And I realize, in Hollywood things can get shelved and all all that stuff. So I'm keeping my expectations.
There's never a guarantee, man.
Right.
I had options on my first thriller, and it was, nice. I'm like, the best champagne. Okay. Maybe half the best champagne. And, luckily I did not put the money down on the aircraft or whatever.
Well, that was wise.
That was pretty wise. So, okay. So you're working on the next book. Do you have books like, stuck in a drawer in various processes, editing, that sort of thing, or you just working on the second book, or what?
So not at various stages. So when I went to start this first one, I wrote down about 5 different ideas, and I built those ideas out to about a page in length and just started just developing them a little bit and figuring out, where would this go and how would this look? So I had about 5 different ones on the table. Mm-hmm. And then I chose one for the first book. And I chose it because I thought it was the most primal, it was most visceral, it was most hard hitting. And that's how I wanted to enter the scene. I wanted to come on and really, knock it out of the park with the hardest hitting debut thriller that I possibly could. So that's why I chose that one. Now those other ones, I think they're going to all get morphed into books now they'll be different than how I originally conceived them, but they have legs. And the second one is, I'm super excited about it. The idea for that one came from a real world experience that I had in Iraq. And now I've just fictionalized that and moved it international. But the inspiration from it came from a real world event and a real world person.
Wow.
In Iraq. So, and I think that's why the first one's really resonating. And I think that's why Emily Bestler Books, Atria, Simon & Schuster, why I think it resonated with her is because even though it's a fictional thriller, the emotions that the protagonist feels are things that I felt at some point over the last 20 years. So
Right.
I got to tap into those emotions from real world experiences and apply them to a fictional novel. So I think when the reader is, they don't have to really read too far between the lines to get the impression that, wow, this sounds really authentic. And if that's the case, and that's because it is, because those feelings are coming from a real place, and that carries over into book 2 as well. So I do have book 3 ready to start that one as soon as I finish up here on book 2 and get to work on that. Then I have a couple others kind of in the drawer and anytime I have an idea, I write not just a sentence or 2 down, but I try to develop it into a couple paragraphs and
like a treatment, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's something I've never been all that great at is, the pre-writing. I'm a pantser, man. I do discovery writing through the whole process. Just launch. Fix everything in post. That's my
I do. So I came up with that's the story, and the kind of the title, the story, and then I built out the outline, and not in great detail, but enough where there was a beginning, middle, and an end, and there were some cool scenes or some things that I wanted to incorporate into each one of those sections. And as I wrote, then I'd start writing. And as I wrote, then I would fill in the outline as I went till I got to about the 75% mark of the book. And then I just discarded the outline because it wasn't efficient to continue to fill that in. I knew where we were going. I knew, what I had, the scenes that I wanted to be in there and where I wanted them placed. But it did help up to about that 75% mark to be able to look at an outline and have a visual representation of where I was so far as go and everything. So that's kind of how I did it. And I didn't really get that from anybody. That's just kind of how I naturally went about doing it.
Yeah, it sounds like a good method to me, man. And it's solid. What's your goal when you're writing? Do you have a word count goal or how do you work it out?
Yeah, so the first one, I just knew, hey, I don't know where I got this from, but I think somebody read it somewhere that these thrillers are usually about 100,000 words. Mm-hmm. And I think mine ended up being about 110,000, I think. The second one, I think, is about 118,000 as of this podcast. Yeah. I think so, a little longer than the first one. And there's still some scenes I need to get in there, so it'll be a little longer. But I got something from Stephen Pressfield, and I don't think I got it from one of his books that he does on creativity. He has the War of Art, Turning Pro, The Authentic Swing. He has those books that are all amazing. But I think I heard this on a podcast, and he said that he would take a yellow sticky note, and in his case, he said he put it next to his typewriter with the theme of his book on it. Right. And so I did the same thing. I put revenge on a yellow sticky, and I put it here on my MacBook. And as I was writing, if I came to a point where I was like, does this really fit with the story? Then I just look at that yellow sticky and say, if it doesn't directly or indirectly tie back to that theme, then I just would either stop writing it and discard what I had already written. And in the editing process, I think it helped with the editing process because I essentially had already edited it for content anyway, as I was writing. So that really helped me. The other thing that Stephen Pressfield, I think this is from a podcast, I think it's from the Joe Rogan podcast, but he said, hey, you've never heard of a trucker getting trucker's block? And I was like, right. That's awesome. Like there's no such thing as writer's block. You just write. You're a professional writer. That's what you do. You write. And so I just love that. And so I think about that from time to time. I haven't run into the so-called writer's block yet, but I just love what he says about it. It doesn't exist. So essentially you slay it before you even experience it.
Right. Yeah. If you bring the skill and you bring the determination, then you will bring the words. That's the way that works.
That's it. I mean, lawyer's block, doctor's block, trucker's block. I mean, these things don't exist. In writing. So
I tell you, man, if I ever have to switch careers, though, I'm totally claiming block. Like if I walk in, I'm a plumber. I'm sorry.
Can't do it today.
Not hit. I cannot. I've got toilet.
Perhaps you've heard of it. I have plumber's block today.
I have plumber's
So,
block.
yeah. So yeah,
I'm
that
just
doesn't
going to be
cut it.
over here in the corner contemplating my muse.
Yeah, that doesn't cut it in any other profession.
So if you now you're writing thrillers, was there any other genre that ever attracted you that you thought I could write that, I might write that someday?
No, I mean, I love historical fiction, but I love reading historical fiction. I
Yeah.
think I love writing. I never really contemplated anything else. I just love writing in this genre, and it's what I love to read growing up and what I want to do going forward. Um,
Nothing
there's
wrong with
been
that.
a couple of people that have started, left the military and done a nonfiction book first, and I really didn't have any interest in doing that. I wanted to skip over that piece and get right to what I really wanted to write about, which was the fiction.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, nothing wrong with that at all, man. That's I mean, and you clearly you read in that genre quite a bit. That's
I
always
took a break from it though. So I took like a 20-year break, and I'd sneak, a Brad Thor or a Vince Flynn or a Daniel Silva in every now and again. But particularly after September 11th, I just really felt that I owed the guys and owed the country my full focus on the task at hand. And so that's studying insurgencies and counterinsurgencies and terrorism, and studying the places in the world where we would be going so that I could make the best decisions under fire, under pressure when it counted. But interestingly enough, all that study and all that research now is helping with these novels. So I didn't mean for it to be that way at the time, but just being so focused on that for so long, and having this knowledge base and knowing where to go to get information and all the rest of it, I can incorporate that now into these novels. So,
that's an interesting. So that blows my mind. I had a little mind explosion when you said that, because now it makes me think. Because I always make the argument for self-guided education, specialized education, specialized knowledge, that sort of thing. And I think that's what you did, whether you meant to or not. And it fed into, you went and did that. The day job was saving America for, however many years you were in there, and making sure your guys were okay and making sure you were doing your duty. But the side benefit was when you came out, you had specialized knowledge you could pour into the writing. That's amazing, man.
Exactly. It's it's all about understanding the nature of the conflict in which you're engaged, and that's what you owe your guys. You have to articulate it to them why you're going to do certain things, and then you have to be able to articulate that up the chain of command so that they trust you too. So it's really building trust both up and down the chain of command. So just it happens to now that all that study and all that focus now can get applied to this this new profession. So and I love to explore it without the added pressure of having going down range and having guys' lives depend on my decisions. So now I can explore those things with another end state in mind.
Yeah. And in my experience, people rarely shoot at me over the books. Rarely.
Rarely. That's good to know. Thank you. I've been a little worried about that.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying it's not a 100% thing.
Got it.
All right. So we're getting on to time, and I want to respect your time and let you get back to the writing, because we're going to want to see book 2. But where can people find you and your work online?
Yeah, so I'm very new to social media, of course, because in the SEAL teams or in the military in general,
you can't exactly tweet, check out where I am. Here's my stuff.
It's tough. And then you have families doing it, you have kids doing it, and it's and they showed us what the enemy could do to exploit open source information like that. And just by
that's a whole book.
And I'm incorporating some of it into future novels. But they can really essentially map out an entire team command and control structure based on all the stuff that is openly available to them. So so I never had it, and I never had any interest in posting anything about myself or what I was doing. But now, as a new author, I've kind of expected to. So I'm slowly wading in. So now I have Twitter and Instagram. Those are the two where I really interact with people about the book. And it's Jack Carr USA on those two. There's a Facebook too, but it's 3 was too much. 3 was just too much to deal with. So we post some stuff up there every now and again, but really I'm not interacting with people on there, and I'm not looking at it ever really. So it's really, we have one, but really it's the Instagram and the Twitter where I'm interacting with people. So Jack Carr USA there, and then officialjackcarr.com on the website. And the website has some articles for people that want to get a little deeper into the guns and the gear side of things. They can explore a little more in depth on the website there, and that's where people can find me.
Man, I may have to keep you. I may have to keep you on file for when I need somebody to give me some advice on, guns and the
Reach out.
military, special forces. Man, you may have to
Reach
be a
out. No,
source.
it's tough. I can see how it is tough because sometimes I'm checking things, and I
Yeah,
can really imagine how it is for someone that hasn't spent 20 years in that profession to then be writing about it, or some of the more technical
exactly.
aspects of the weaponry and gear and that sort of thing. Because there's a lot of information online, but there's also a lot of bad information online. So
Yeah, yeah.
anyway, so yeah, please reach out anytime.
Dude, you got it. All right, man. Okay. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, man. I really appreciate it. You're a fantastic interview. I wish you just every success with the book, the new book, the movie. I think
Thank you.
we're gonna hear that name a lot more, man. Jack Carr. Don't forget me when you are at like Lee Child level of success. All right.
No way. No, thanks so much. Really appreciate you having me on.
All right. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. And now we're going to hop on over and get some of the industry news that's hot right now this week. Don't worry, we got you covered. You may be hearing the groovy bridge music right now. You may dance in place at will. And I'll see you on the other side with all the industry news you can possibly handle. See you then.
Hear your book the way it was meant to be heard. With a fully custom soundtrack based on your material, an album of music that perfectly fits your characters, your settings. Hear your book today. SonataInscribe.com.
Hey, thanks for sticking around. I hope I hope you enjoyed that interview with Jack Carr. I almost said I hope you interviewed Jack Carr. And if you have interviewed Jack Carr, let me know. I'd love to see it. So here we are. We're on the other side of the interview. So this is where I am traditionally dropping in some cool stuff about the Wordslinger verse, we'll say. I've started kind of giving you guys some insight into kind of my process, how things are working with the way I write and publish. And right now, so if you've listened recently, in December I released the Antarctic Forgery, and I talked a little bit about that process. I had someone ask me on the podcast show, one of the show pages, to kind of run through how I did that. So how I finished the book, got it edited, and got the cover made and published it in basically 30 days. And I happen to have a whole book on this topic. It's a little outdated, I gotta tell you. I think it's time for me to revisit 30-Day Author and kind of update it for the modern Wordslinger era. But the gist there was so I write every day. I will admit that I had kind of slacked off on the daily writing for a good solid year there while I took care of other things. I wrote other books in between starting Antarctic Forgery and releasing it. Books that have not been published, by the way. So another master plan at work there. But I'm working on that. So here's the deal. So I write every day. I've had word targets. I've had time targets. These days I've decided I'm just going to be happy with whatever my output is for the day. And take some of the stress off myself. That said, I do set like a 2,000 word minimum for a writing session, and that's more so that I can kind of gauge how I'm doing. And then on a lot of days, I'll do well over that. So it really just depends on how much time you have, how dedicated you are to it, how energetic and inspired you feel. But I've found that if I come back to the page every single day with just the goal of I'm putting some words down for the day, I tend to do pretty well. I think you will too. What happens is you get into flow. If you haven't heard about this concept, if you're unfamiliar with the term, maybe, flow is kind of just, from my perspective, it's this state of mind you enter into where everything is just sort of working for you. So if you are in sports, you might get into flow as a runner. You might actually kind of get into that rhythm where it's almost like your body's running on autopilot. You're doing your best, time or your best pace. Same thing happens to like race car drivers. Same thing happens to pianists. Can get into flow. Writers, I think in particular, we get into flow. And the idea there is, as I'm writing, I sort of check out in one sense, and in another sense, I'm immersed in this world I'm creating. I'm right there with the characters. It's almost like dreaming, actually. You ever had a dream where you were not quite you were actually someone else, and that someone else was doing things that you have never done or would never do, might never do, or have always wanted to do? So it's a little bit like that. It's like entering a sort of waking dream state that is guided and directed, though. So you're not, just floundering all over the place. So I'm going to dig deeper into that later. There's a whole lot going on here that I think is going to be interesting and useful to authors. So I'm gonna work on that. So I get into that flow state and I write the book day by day by day, and I take the scenes I've written from the day before into Grammarly, where I run that check, and then I edit those scenes. I've run into a little glitch with Grammarly. I'm gonna let you guys know about it. Now, some people use Pro Writing Aid, which I also have. Some people use Hemingway. I have all three of these. I've been playing around with each of them to see what I like best. Grammarly seems to have the best interface for the way that I produce these, but I've run into an issue with it just randomly inserting line breaks in sentences. So the sentence, she was there. It'll be she, line break was, line break there. And then continue on with the rest of the sentence or paragraph. I don't know why it's doing that. And it's showing up in the manuscripts, but not really visible when I'm editing. So I don't really know what's happening there. I'm going to reach out to the folks at Grammarly and see if they've heard of anything like this, and see what we can do about it. Because the process for me was import it into Grammarly, run the automated check, fix things that needed to be fixed, and you still have to use your brain, by the way. You still have to look at these things and consider: is that a good suggestion? Is it correct? Do I want to use that word? That replaced word. You still got to use your editing brain. But I was editing the passage in that, doing my rewrites in Grammarly, and then exporting that as a file, a Word file, and importing it into Scrivener. Now I've stopped doing the rewrite in there, and I take it back into Scrivener as an edited file without making major changes. I make the Grammarly suggested changes, and then I do the rewrite back in Scrivener. And I think what I'm going to do is do a second pass of Grammarly, scene by scene, before I finalize the book. I'm not sure yet. I'm working out this is all about figuring out the best possible workflow. So that means experimenting and taking time. You should do the same. So from there, the edited document is in Scrivener. So it's basically edited as I go. Even though I preached against this in 30-Day Author, I think this is a good way to do it. This looping process that Dean Wesley Smith talks about. He does like 500 words and then loops back and edits. I'm doing this scene by scene, day by day. So reading and editing that scene I wrote yesterday, or the chapter I wrote yesterday, sometimes 3 or 4 scenes, reading and editing that gets me back into the flow of the story, and I just carry on. So there's no angsty moment of writer's block where I can't figure out what to write next. So that's how that works. Now, I take that when I'm done with the manuscript. It's fairly clean at that point. I spit that out as a Word document. I compile it from Scrivener as a Word document, and I run words, grammar, and spell check over the entire manuscript, fix things that way. I do certain find and replace things. For example, I look for double spaces after a period and replace those with a single space. I look for, because, by the way, it's just not necessary anymore. And you can argue with me all you want. I did it for decades. I understand where you're coming from. We don't need 2 spaces after a period. They're no longer acceptable. Go argue in a forum somewhere. But aside from that, I also do, I tend to typo Kotler as Coulter. So I do little searches that I know I'm prone, the mistakes I'm prone to make. Once I've got a clean Word document, I take that into Vellum. You could take it into Draft2Digital's ebook converter, but I mean, I already paid for Vellum. I had it before I ever even started with D2D, so I'm pretty okay with using Vellum. But if I didn't have Vellum, I could use D2D's converter. I spit that out as the various ebook formats and print-ready formats, the PDF, the Mobi, the EPUB. I take that into BookFunnel, and I create a page for my street team to be able to download the book. And I set a date, an expiration date on that, so that, none of those folks ever share that link, but just in case. I don't want anyone ever spreading it around after the fact, but they get that sort of fairly clean draft, fairly clean, and then they give me edits. I know I do pre-orders, so I know when the book has to be finalized. It's a minimum of 3 days before the pre-order date. I request that my team get me any edits they have by typically like 5 days out, about a week out. And there's some gap, but if I can get at least 5 days out, that's 2 days to make the changes and get the manuscript uploaded, and then that's it. As far as covers, well, I'm kind of lucky in that I have a graphic design background, so I design my own covers. However, as I suggested in my response to this gentleman, you could easily hire someone to do your cover in advance, give them the basics of what you're going to need, even if you haven't started the manuscript yet. You're going to need a cover. Pay that person to design a cover in a sort of loose way that they can tighten up at the end of the process. So, if you pay $200 or $300 for a cover designer, you can pay more or you can pay less, but that seems to be about an average. Find somebody who can maybe create the illustrations and get the typography set up, knowing that you might change titles, knowing that you might want to change the direction of the imagery slightly, something along those lines. They can do a loose sort of sketch. It won't be the most beautiful looking cover you've ever seen right off, but it'll give you the idea you can work from. Sometimes people write to these cover designs. They buy a pre-made cover, for example, and they write the book based on that pre-made cover. So it can be kind of helpful to have that in advance. Just communicate with your designer and let them know your intention is I want to eventually tweak this before it's finalized, and that you've got a schedule to work with. The more disciplined you can become about all this, the easier it's going to be to pull all these strings together over a 30-day period if you want to do your book in 30 days. So I freely admit I have certain advantages, but I will say that the biggest thing that's helped me is using Grammarly and Pro Writing Aid and things like that to help with the editing during the process. I don't recommend editing as you go, which is an entirely different concept. Editing as you go means they're vacuuming. Up top, they're vacuuming. Editing as you go would be trying to make the words perfect while you're writing. That's going to stop you dead in your tracks. You'll never finish the book. I'll put it out there. I'll back that up. There are those who manage to finish the book anyway are unicorns. But for we mere mortals, that's going to exponentially increase the chance that we'll never finish that book. That's the skeleton of the process. Now, I had a chance to get on the phone to get on Zoom actually with Roland Denzel, the real life Roland Denzel. Hey, Roland, and we kind of looked over a few things. I've been fine tuning my processes in the way that I work. He had some frustration with Scrivener, and sort of the way it does like full screen and things like that. There are probably ways to make Scrivener behave the way he wants it to. But we got into a whole discussion about that. One of the things that I wanted to mention out of that, you need to find the writing tool that's going to work for you and your workflow. So that may be Scrivener. I like Scrivener, and I use, as I told Roland, I probably only use maybe 1 or 2% of the features in Scrivener. So I like to write, I like the binder, and I like the sort of chapter and scene breakdown I can do. And I will occasionally rearrange chapters and scenes, so the binder makes that possible for me. That same feature is available to you on a Windows computer using Microsoft Word, because they have the outline feature. That outline feature is available on Mac's version of Word, but you can't rearrange any of the content. So it didn't do as a replacement for me. But I also like Scrivener because it's not Word. I can write in Scrivener and change my mental landscape a little, whereas I typically write copy and business writing in MS Word. So it's like changing the environment a little. Excuse me. On top of all that, I don't really use like the ebook conversion built into that system. I compile as a Word document. I use Vellum for my formatting. You can use, there are several ways to do this that'll give you a very nice ebook. It's a lot easier to put together than the Scrivener version. But that's you got to find the tool that's going to allow you to work efficiently, and that's going to make you want to come back to the work each day. For some people, that's Microsoft Word. Justin Sloan likes Microsoft Word. That's his tool. He's tried Scrivener. It's not for him. Aaron Pogue, one of the founders of Draft to Digital, he prefers Google Docs. And I've said this before, but I believe this. Google Docs, to me, is hands down the best collaborative writing tool there is, because of the way it handles live collaboration. Because you can literally, both of you, 2 or 3 of you, and several of you can be in the same document, making edits, writing new passages, whatever, live, seeing it happen on screen, seeing each person's contributions, seeing comments from each other. I think it's a fantastic tool, and I used to write books in Google Docs, but I don't know. It's not. At the time, I was using Google Docs for mobile writing, and then I lost a book due to a crash. At the time, there was no live backup and that sort of thing for that. So that put me off of it, I think. Maybe I'm wary of it that way, but I've written things with people in that, and I think it's a fantastic tool. It's also free, and it's tied to a whole bunch of other Google properties. So, that's a great tool, and it's on every platform. So that is a great writing tool. And you can spit that out as a Word document very easily and import that into Draft to Digital or Vellum or anywhere else. And you can do your formatting that way. Or you can use, and I always thought it was pronounced Calibre, but some people say Calibre. But there's a tool out there that people use for conversion. It's a free, open source kind of thing. There's a million ways to do your ebooks if you don't want to use Vellum or D2D or whatever. But you got to find the tools that work for you and the process that works for you. I've lately been using Trello, which if you haven't used Trello, actually what I need to do is don't sign up for Trello. Instead, sign up. I will provide a link at some point. There's apparently a kind of referral thing, and if you sign up through my link, I get a month free or something. So if you really want to dive into it, you can try the free version, whatever. But it would be cool if you would sign up with my link. But either way, Trello has been great, and I'm going to do, I think, a video series at some point on how I'm using Trello. I'm still sort of working out how I use it, but I have actually used it so far for keeping track of tasks I need to do for the marketing, keeping track of, I've got what I call my Dan Kotler universe in there, which is a list of all my characters and locations and artifacts, and for each of the books there's a book card which has its descriptions and an image of the cover that I can share with people, and things I would use to market the work. But eventually all this stuff it's going to be. I'm going to share this with a VA or somebody so that I don't have to manage it myself. And I do the same thing with producing this show. So Wordslinger Podcast, there's a podcast production board that has, the upcoming interviews, the currently recorded, need to be produced, and the finalized episodes, plus all the assets and everything that I need. And I've even discovered that I can upload the source files to that board. So there's a lot of advantages to using Trello to help manage your stuff. And in my chat with Roland Denzel yesterday, we actually talked a little bit about, or maybe it was the day before. I've been sick. I'm missing days here. But in my chat with Roland, we actually talked about ways to maybe plot a book using Trello. And I'm going to start experimenting and see what we can figure out there. I promised you I had a review of the show. Let me read that for you. This is from JD. I'm sorry if I mispronounced this name, but JD Lassica. The headline is A Gold Mine of Writing Tips. Not everyone can pull off a compelling podcast, but Kevin T somehow manages to consistently engage indie and traditional authors in a lively, authentic conversation about the writing trade. As an indie thriller author, I came to his podcast late, but now it's the one podcast I turn to so that I can dive into the archives every day during my afternoon walks when the California wildfires allow. It's a goldmine of useful info for writers. And I really appreciate that, JD. Thank you so much for the compliment and the kind words. And, I'm hoping that that's what this show is for people. Roland had kindly pointed out on Facebook to some others that this show was a good source of inspiration and motivation. And that's what I want it to be. It's not, I don't get into the nitty gritty of craft or even of marketing, honestly. But what I do is try to show you how other people are doing what they're doing, what they're getting out of their workflow and their processes and their careers, and provide you with something that meets up with the Wordslinger motto, basically. Mission statement is to inform and inspire, educate and entertain. I want to hit all four of those pillars with every episode. So hopefully that's what it's doing for you. So that is going to wrap us up. I hope you got something useful. It's a little redundant, I think. I did a very similar wrap up last week, but there's some resources and things that I think are going to be useful to people. Trello is a handy thing. I did want to include that information about picking the writing tool that's best for you. And that, heck, I got a buddy of mine who writes in something that's basically just a basic text editor that came with his laptop. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what tool you use. There are a million writing apps out there. A million, if not more. What you have to do is decide how you work best, when you work best, and what tool is going to allow you to come back to that writing every single day. So, or 5 days a week, or whatever works for your schedule. And a quick note on writing times and word goals and that sort of thing. You're going to hear all kinds of advice. And some of it is, to put out a book every 30 days, or to write every single day with no breaks, or to aim for 5,000 words a day. There's all kinds of advice out there. If you can put 100 words down on a page a day or a week or whatever, as long as you're consistent about it, you're making progress. So your goal is, how much progress can I make today? How much progress can I make this week? And if you want to increase your output, then you just have to look at the progress you're making and start making some adjustments to your workflow. And that's how this works. So don't be discouraged. don't compare yourself to anybody. That's the key. But don't be discouraged if you're in a Facebook group or forum or something and everyone's talking about how they crushed it with 5,000 words that day or 20,000 words or whatever. You can congratulate them and take their success as a positive in your own life. Hey, that person wrote 5,000 words today. Good for them. Congratulations. That means that this is achievable. It means that I'm on the right track here. If I can do 500 words today, I'm just like them. I just accomplished something worth celebrating. Celebrate every victory. That's the key. So that said, we're going to wrap up now. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Jack Carr. I hope you enjoyed the tips and advice here at the end. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead of you, depending on when you're listening to this, of course. You may be listening at the gym on a Monday morning. God bless you. God bless all of you. And I will see each and every one of you next time. Take care. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Wordslinger podcast. Now, you can support this show by visiting wordslingerpodcast.com. That's where you're going to find back episodes, books by me, and links to anything and everything Wordslinger. And be sure to subscribe to this show on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and anywhere else fine podcasts are sold. I'm Kevin Tomlinson. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.